The dragon was chained to the shrine before Davin's grandfather was born, and as far as anyone in Thresh Hollow could tell, it had been furious about that arrangement ever since. Davin found out the hard way. He was 13, cutting across the old orchard behind the hill because the market road was flooded, and he had a basket of his mother's preserved plums to sell, and he came around the collapsed wall of what had once been the shrine's outer gate and nearly walked into a wall of scaled, smoke-scented chest. The dragon was enormous. It sat hunched under the oak canopy with its wings folded tight, not because the space was too small, but because it had given up unfolding them. Its scales were the color of old iron, dark gray with a faint red undertone visible only where the morning light hit the edges. Its eyes were the pale amber of river glass, and they were fixed on Davin with an expression that communicated, very clearly, that his presence was unwelcome. "You're blocking my path," Davin said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "You're in my orchard," the dragon said. Its voice was low and dry like stones grinding. "Which is to say, you're in the orchard I have been forced to contemplate for 3 centuries. I am contemptuous of it. Leave." Davin looked at the chain. It ran from a thick iron cuff around the dragon's left foreleg to a stone pillar that had once been part of the shrine's archway, the only pillar still standing. The chain was old, but it was not rusted. Something in it caught the light the wrong way, as if the links were absorbing rather than reflecting it. "That chain is spelled," Davin said. "Observant child, go away." "Who put it there?" The amber eyes narrowed. "A priest. The priest is dead. The priest's order is dead. The temple is rubble, the city it served is rubble, and the kingdom that funded the city has been rubble for so long that your scholars have stopped arguing about when exactly it fell." A pause. "I, however, remain." Davin set his basket down. He had not meant to. It simply happened, the way things happen when you are 13 and have not yet learned that curiosity and self-preservation should be weighted more equally. "Do you know why they chained you?" he asked. "I agreed to it," the dragon said, "which is a different question. Leave." He did leave, but he came back the next morning because the market road was still flooded and it was the only shortcut, and also because he had been thinking about the word agreed. The dragon was there in the same position. It was possible it had not moved. "What did you agree to guard?" Davin asked. "Nothing you need concern yourself with." "Then why are you still here? The priest is dead. The order is dead. The city is rubble." He watched the pale eyes. "Nobody is holding you to an agreement with people who don't exist anymore." The dragon was quiet for long enough that Davin started to think it was done speaking. Then, "Something is." He sat down on the fallen wall. He had the basket again. His mother had sent him back to the market. "The chain. The chain binds my body. What holds me here is not the chain." It looked away, through the oak canopy, at something Davin couldn't see. "Go sell your fruit, child. This is a conversation for something older than you." Davin sold the plums. He came back the following week with a question he'd been chewing on the whole time. "You said you agreed to guard something, not that you were guarding it, past tense." The amber eyes came back to him. Something shifted in them, not warmth, not yet, but the particular quality of attention a person gives when they have been surprised into listening. "Past tense," the dragon confirmed. "So whatever you were guarding, it's either gone, or it doesn't need guarding anymore." "Or it never did," the dragon said, very quietly. "Or the thing I was told I was guarding was not the thing I was actually guarding. Or the thing I was guarding changed, and no one told me because no one was left to tell me." Davin was quiet. 13 was young, but not too young to recognize grief. "What were you told you were guarding?" he asked. The dragon looked at him for a long time. "The king's bloodline, a dynasty, the continuation of a very large and very convinced political structure." It exhaled through its nose, not fire, just heat and smoke, the way a banked hearth breathes. The dynasty fell in a succession crisis, which I was told I would not need to concern myself with, and then it fell again in a war, and then the city burned, and the priests told me the line had been preserved and hidden and I should remain and guard the root of it. A long pause. The root, as best anyone has been able to determine in 300 years, does not exist. There is no one left. There is an oak tree, some rubble, and an orchard that produces inferior plums. Our plums are not inferior, Davin said. They are small and they smell like vinegar. That's the preserving brine, they're good plums. The dragon looked at him with the particular expression of an ancient being confronted with irrelevance. Davin looked back with the particular expression of someone who had spent 3 years in a market stall and was not going to let a factual error go uncorrected. It was, in some ways, the beginning of an understanding. He came back through the orchard once a week after that, sometimes twice. His mother asked where he kept going, and he said he was taking the short way to the river, which was true enough. He brought things without exactly deciding to, a heel of cheese 1 week, a handful of dried figs the next, because it seemed rude to sit and talk to someone who had been alone for 3 centuries without offering something. The dragon did not eat the cheese. It ate the figs with the concentrated attention of something tasting a memory, and it told him so, unprompted, which surprised Davin because it had not volunteered information before. The priests had a fig tree, it said, in the courtyard that is now the crater. Its tail moved slightly, not a wag, more the way a flag moves in a wind that isn't quite enough to stir it. It was a good tree. What were they like, the priests? Irritating, convinced they understood more than they did, occasionally kind. Another exhale. The last one was very young. He apologized to me before he died. I did not know what he was apologizing for at the time. I think I understand it better now. Davin didn't ask what the apology had been for. He had the feeling that question would need its own separate morning, and he had learned by then to let the dragon set its own pace, not because it would stop talking if he pushed, but because the things it said when it wasn't pushed were different from the things it said when it was. Fuller, more honest. He spent that winter asking questions it would answer and letting the others rest. He learned the shape of the kingdom that had been, not as history but as texture, the way the dragon remembered it, the smell of the market in the city's harbor district, the sound the festival bells made when the wind came in from the right direction, the particular stubbornness of the priests about small ceremonial details while being remarkably flexible about large doctrinal ones. He asked once whether the dragon had been happy there before. That is not a word I would have used at the time, the dragon said. I had a purpose, a position. I was considered formidable and I considered myself worthy of consideration. It looked at the chain. I do not know if that was happiness. I know it was different from this. From this, Davin said, meaning stuck here or meaning talking to me specifically. The amber eyes cut to him. You are impertinent. You answered, though. Talking to you, the dragon said slowly, is the least unpleasant part of this, which is a low bar. Do not make more of it than it is. Davin made more of it than it was, privately, and said nothing. What he asked instead, when spring came and he was 14, and had been coming to the orchard long enough that the dragon no longer watched him with the tight, coiled wariness of those first weeks, was the question that had been sitting in him the whole time, getting heavier. If there's nothing left to guard, what do you actually want? The dragon went very still. It was different from its usual stillness, which was the stillness of something conserving itself across centuries. This was the stillness of something caught without an answer. No one, it said slowly, has asked me that. In 300 years. In 300 years. It looked down at the cuff on its foreleg, then back at Davin. I have been asked what I am guarding. I have been asked when I will be released. I have been asked whether I am dangerous, which is an insult wrapped in a reasonable question. I have not been asked what I want. So Davin said, what do you want? The amber eyes were very still. He could see himself in them, a boy with a basket, sitting on a fallen wall, asking a 300-year-old dragon about its wishes. "I don't know," the dragon said, and something in the line of its shoulders, the set of its old iron scales, shifted, not dramatically, not visibly to anyone who hadn't been watching for months. But Davin had been watching for months. "I knew what I had agreed to. I knew what I was for. I have not permitted myself to consider the other question." "Then consider it," Davin said. "I'll wait." The dragon looked at him. "You have plums to sell. They'll keep, they're preserved." It made a sound then, low, rough, not quite a laugh, not quite a dismissal. Something in between, the way old things sound when they are surprised into almost amusement. Davin had never heard it make that sound before. "I want," the dragon said carefully, "to have been worth the centuries. I want the thing I kept to have mattered. And I want," it stopped, looked away, looked back. "I want to know if the fig tree left seeds, whether anything of that courtyard came back." Davin knew, because he had spent the summer asking the old records keeper, and 2 historians, and 1 very old woman who had walked through this valley as a girl, before the records keeper had said she was wasting her time with him specifically. "There's a fig tree at the Veth Crossing Market," he said. "The vendor says it came from a cutting someone brought down from the hills 40 years ago, and the cutting came from a tree that grew in the ruins north of the pass. She says it's a very old variety. The fruit is different from the common ones, smaller, pale green, sweet without being sharp." He paused. "I bought one last autumn when I first found out. I've been waiting for the right time to say it." He reached into his basket. "It's been in brine. I don't know if that ruins the point, but it's what I had." He held it up, small, pale green, the old press variety that the records keeper had called the shrine fig when Davin had described it to her, before she had made him repeat himself 3 times because she had not believed he knew the distinction. The dragon was very quiet. The chain lay slack against the pillar. The morning light came through the oak leaves in pieces. It reached out slowly and took the fig from his hand. Its claws were careful in the way that large things learn to be careful around small ones, a learned precision, not an instinctive one. It held the fig and did not eat it for a long moment. "The tree came back," it said. "The tree came back," Davin agreed. The chain made a sound then, not a snap, not a dramatic breaking, more like a note resolving. The iron links went slack all at once, falling against the pillar with a sound like a breath being let out, and the spelled darkness in them faded in the morning light the way frost fades. Quietly, without announcement, because the thing that had been holding it in place had simply finished. The dragon sat with the released chain pulled around its foreleg, and did not move for a long time. "It released because you decided you knew the answer," Davin said. "He was guessing, but he was good at guessing." "It released," the dragon said, "because I finally asked the question I had been avoiding." It looked at the fig in its palm. "And because someone answered it." It ate the fig with the same concentrated attention as the dried ones. Then it folded its wings more loosely, a different fold, less like armor and more like rest, and looked at Davin with something in its expression that had not been there in any of the months before. "You should sell your plums," it said. "They are adequate plums, and your family depends on the income." "They're excellent plums," Davin said, picking up his basket. "They are acceptable plums. The figs, however," it paused. "Tell the vendor at Veth Crossing that the variety is called the Ketharvan Shrine fig. It was bred across 4 generations by gardeners whose names are in no record you will ever find. She should know what she has." "I'll tell her," Davin said. He went to sell his plums. He came back the following week, as he always did, but by a longer route around the base of the hill and up through the old orchard gate, because the road was dry now, and he chose the shortcut for other reasons. The dragon was still there, sitting under the oak canopy. It had unfolded its wings once while he was gone, he could tell by the bent branches, The disturbed leaves piled where a wind from inside the orchard had moved them. Just once, and then folded them back. Testing, maybe. Or remembering what it had decided about being worth the centuries, and checking whether the body remembered too. It did not tell him to leave. Davin set his empty basket on the fallen wall. He had sold out early. The plums had gone well at the morning market, and sat beside it and asked his next question, which he had been turning over on the walk up. "What do you want to do now?" The dragon considered this for a long moment, long enough that a crow landed in the oak above them, decided it was not interested in whatever was happening below, and left. "I want," it said at last, "to find out what else came back." Davin nodded. That seemed right. That seemed like an answer worth 3 centuries of waiting for someone to ask.